Welcome back, Mykee.
Thanks, JD.
So, can you remind me of your recovery date?
Uh, 2/29/2020.
So, you got 4.5 years now.
Yep.
It'll be 4.5 on the 29th,
Oh, wow. Yes, it will.
right? Did I do that math right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 4.5. Now, when did you start drinking?
I started drinking when I was early teens. I think like 13. Um,
Do you remember your first time?
my first beer, like socially, was at my friend Lynn's house. Um, and it was a Genesee. And I just remember it being absolutely terrible. I gagged. Like, I gagged it down. It was not a pleasant experience, but I still opened the second one because I knew what the end result was supposed to be, and I wanted to get there.
That was your first drink?
That was my first beer, and let's see, my first mixed drink. That was actually, wow, that was like fifth grade.
That's
Um,
how old I was. I was in fifth grade when I first discovered alcohol.
yeah, it was fifth grade, and it was peach schnapps. Um, and I had had a couple of friends over for a sleepover, and I knew where my parents kept the alcohol, obviously, because I was raised by an alcoholic too. Ah. Um, but the peach schnapps was right in front, and I knew that that was going to be nice and sweet, and I already knew that peach schnapps and orange juice, does a fuzzy navel make. So made a couple of little fuzzy navels for me and my friends, and I remember they didn't quite like them as much as I did. So I finished mine and both of theirs.
Are you allergic to peaches?
I am now, but I wasn't back then.
Okay, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure you're allergic to peaches because you're allergic to everything.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was I was 19 when I figured out that I was allergic to fruit. And that was the result of taking allergy medicine with fruit juice. So don't do that.
Is that really what it was from?
Well, that's what I think caused it. And now Allegra has like warnings about not taking it with certain fruit juices. So,
Yeah, it sounds like it could be then.
yeah,
How old were you when you first like got drunk?
that was seventh grade. Um, I was hanging out with the same friend that gave me the Genesee beer. Um, and we were going to the local bowling alley, and we had a bottle of alcohol of some kind. I don't even remember what it was, but we got a couple of sodas from the snack bar at the bowling alley, and we we drank some and mixed the rest, shook it up, and ta-da, we had a to-go cocktail.
So your first drunk was at a bowling alley.
Yep.
It's funny because my first drink was fifth grade, and my first like drunk was New Year's Eve in seventh grade.
That's really funny. I think it was like November because that's when Lenny's birthday was. So me
Yeah.
thinks it was November, but by that summer though, I was making dew drivers.
What's a dew driver?
A dew driver is Mountain Dew and vodka.
Yeah.
Mhm. But I would get a bottle of Mountain Dew and I would drink down to the top of the label. So like the whole top bulb, and then I would fill that up with vodka, put the cap back on, swish it, and I had the whole thought in my head because I had been told like, oh, nobody can smell vodka, nobody can smell vodka. So I was like, nobody's gonna be able to smell this.
You
And
know that there is a smell with vodka.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But somebody had told me along the way that vodka didn't have a smell, so that was my
That was,
thinking there.
yeah, yeah. That thinking will get you far.
Yeah.
So, when would you consider yourself to be an alcoholic? Like, how old were you? Like, I consider myself an alcoholic since I was 12 because that's when I started drinking, not for the effect, but for a reason. I wasn't drinking to get drunk when I was 12, but I was drinking if like somebody passed away or, I had a bad day at school and I was getting made fun of. Stuff like that, would cause me to drink. So I would consider myself an alcoholic when I was 12. When would you consider yourself becoming an alcoholic?
It was seventh grade because it was, oh, well, that sucked. So let's drink about it. Or, oh my God, this is so exciting. So let's drink about it. And it went from there. And I really enjoyed, mixing other things with my alcohol. I know that we've talked about that
What do you
with
mean
your story.
mixing other things?
Like, I just liked to party and just really any bad idea was a good idea. Um, like sex or other substances or just really risky behavior, like getting in cars with strangers and going across state lines, because that's, fun stuff that I used to do all the time. But I lived in a small town that was just on the Pennsylvania side of the New York State Pennsylvania border. So like the small town that I lived in, there was really nothing to do except for like party um or hunt. And I didn't like hunting. I tried and it just wasn't for me. Uh so yeah, partying was really all that there was to do. And so like nothing was nearby. You needed a car. And so even though I was only in like seventh grade, I made friends with people that had friends that were older. Or, I would find one of our cats is up to no good.
I heard it.
You think it was Scooby?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So you would get on. We were distracted by the cats that we
Oh
have.
yeah.
We have two cats, and one is a terror, and she likes to get up on tables and knock shit off.
Yeah, especially if she thinks that she should be getting attention.
And right now, neither of us are paying attention to them.
Exactly.
I'm surprised Diver's not at your feet yet.
Before we started, he was right behind me crying. So I'm sure he'll be back.
So we'll get back on track before we.
Oh, yeah. So there was nothing local to do. So, like, you had to get into a car and go like 9 miles just to get to a McDonald's or a Dunkin' Donuts or anything. The nearest movie theater was a good like 45-minute drive away. Like across the state line into New York. Like we would go up to Johnson City, like the Binghamton area of New York to go see movies or go to Walmart, because going to Walmart was like a big deal. It's what we did on like a Friday night. We would drive up there and we'd go to Walmart and we would act stupid, and then we would get one of our friends that was of age, or we would pay somebody, because in Walmart we could get alcohol. We would pay somebody to get us booze, and then we would drink and drive back home because that's, a good idea.
It's funny because I grew up in Jersey, right along the border of Pennsylvania, and there was a ton for us to do locally, but we would still, it was like an adventure to go over the bridge. Like you literally cross state lines, which are like invisible
Yeah.
lines. But for me to leave the state, I had to go over a bridge and pay a $5 toll to go over the bridge. It was even more of a big deal for us to cross state lines because you really had to work for it. Like
Yeah.
you had to pay a $5 toll just to go over the bridge. And
It probably gave your parents a little bit of security knowing that like you'd have to pay to get out of the state.
instead we would go to Camden to buy beer.
So much better.
Yeah, because you didn't need a bridge to go into Camden. For those who don't know, Camden is not where you want to find yourself at any point in the day. I
Mm.
used to go to Camden to buy pills. This one dealer I had, um, we called him Lou. Well, his nickname was Black Lou. Um,
Of course.
he used to hang out in all the bars in our town, and he was always the only black guy there. And so he started calling himself Black Lou. Um,
Oh,
and I would buy pills off him, and I would buy pills off him at our local bar, Giuseppe's, and then I would have to go to another bar to see him called the Spread Eagle, or eventually because he kept getting kicked out in '86 from all these different bars. So he would get kicked out for selling in one bar. He'll go to another bar and set up shop. Then they would kick him out, go to another bar. By the time he passed away from liver failure because he would spend 6 hours at the bar every single day. He was like 43 years old when he passed. But in the last 2 years that I used to buy pills off him, he hung out in the bar in Camden. So I would have, and I drove an old police car. So I would have to drive my old police car through Camden, which they don't like cops. They don't
no.
like cops so much that the Camden Police Department went away. There is no longer a police department in Camden. They are policed by the county sheriffs because all their cops were like dirty cops, and so they shut down the police completely and made the sheriffs take over, the county sheriffs. And I used to see him at this one bar. I would text him here. He would come out. He would get into the back seat. I would do a big lap around the block, drop him back off, and be on my way. But I never went there at night. I always made sure, and I couldn't go there at night because Lou started drinking at 11.
Oh,
He would,
he's done.
he would be home by 4 or 5, and he lived 45 minutes away in this nice condo. And 45 minutes in Jersey might as well be 3 hours because of how spread apart Jersey is. It's so on top of each other. So yeah, I used to see Lou all the time in Camden before I got clean.
Yeah.
So it's a shit. I was upset when I heard he passed because he was a good dude. Like, yeah, he was an alcoholic. Yeah, he was a pill dealer. But at the end of the day, like, he was a funny dude that I used to get drunk with, and he was a fun person to get drunk with. So, even though I'm clean now, I still have good memories of Black Lou and all the times we spent together at the bar. So anyway, you're crossing lines. You're a teenager. Get back
Yeah.
on track. You're a teenager. You're crossing state lines. Um, does it ever become a problem with like your mom?
Oh yeah. But like she was an over the road truck driver for like most of my adolescence. So like she would get upset but kind of only in passing. Um but I guess like the most problematic it would become was like if I didn't know that she was home and I'd be rolling in like half cocked with like a cigarette hanging out of my mouth, and all of a sudden there she would be at the sliding glass door as I'm fumbling for my key like, oh shit, hi. um so she caught me a few times coming home like that, but like I would get grounded or whatever. But as soon as she left for work and she'd be gone for 5 days, none of that mattered. Um, I was I had older stepbrothers that were supposed to be responsible for me, but they were partying just as much, if not worse. So like the last thing that they wanted to be worried about was me. The only time I think that they really like were concerned was when one of our parents would call, like their dad or my mom. So but one of those stepbrothers and I got into an altercation when I was in ninth grade. And that led to me getting kicked out of the house for a while. And, I was out of the house for almost a year. And during that time, there were there was no limits to anything that I was doing. But over the course of all of that, I also, started smoking weed. um, I was introduced to acid. I was just all kinds of just risky, disgusting behavior for somebody that was not even 18 yet.
Acid and me had a fun time.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I didn't get into acid until I was 22. I was I was turning 22 at the end of the month. I got into acid at the beginning of September of 2008. And I can, go back that far because I remember going on acid for like 6 times in a matter of 2 weeks. And maybe it was 3 weeks. And each time was the greatest night of my life. Like, I learned no lessons from taking acid. Every single time I took it, I had a good time. Um, I never had a bad trip or anything like that. I haven't done acid since 2010, maybe was the last time that I took acid. So you're talking like 14 years ago, almost
yeah.
15 years ago was the last time I took acid. Um, I don't know if I think if I had a chance to take it again, I might want to do that just because of all the good times I had with it. But at the same time, like, it is a drug. I shouldn't do drugs.
No, you shouldn't do drugs. Drugs are just bad. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Mackey. Um,
Well, listen, I had a bad experience on acid. I had a terrible experience. So, like, I could go the rest of my life without it. I was I was miserable on it. Like I could feel light and it stung. It was not pleasant. Um I was also with people that I didn't really know. I was with one friend that I knew and then these guys that I didn't know and we ended up in their car and of course we were going up to Binghamton.
that's the bad trip right there. You with people you don't know or you don't trust, and that can completely ruin the trip. Wait, I want to backtrack. You were 15 and you left home.
Oh yeah.
Where were you staying for an entire year? You weren't sleeping outside, were you?
I slept outside a little bit. Thankfully, not that much.
You get cold as hell up there.
Yeah, it gets real cold up there. Um, but I slept in some friends' cars, couch hopped. A couple of my friends' families let me stay for like months or something at a time. Um, but nothing overly consistent. For a little while, I slept on a friend's brother's trampoline in his backyard when it was nice out. That wasn't so bad. Um,
It's like being on a waterbed.
yeah, I mean, you still get covered in dew when you wake up, so, you know, you gotta have something covering you that then can be laid out to dry. But anyway, it was around actually that time that I got sick with a a staph infection and had to like go to the hospital. And when I was at the hospital, of course, they were like, "Oh, where's your parents? Do they know that you're here?" No. So they called my mom and they called, children and youth, whatever. Um, or they were going to call children and youth. I don't remember. But my mother swooped in like mother of the year then, was like, "Oh, my poor baby, come home. You're sick." Oh, and that's how I got to go back home. And I stayed there until the day of my high school graduation party, and then I moved out during my high school graduation party because fuck all that.
I was gonna
um,
say, why during?
um because I was angry about the party. um my mom and stepdad, like, they went all out to make sure that the house was like immaculate, and they rented a tent and I think a couple of kegs, and I don't know. It was more their party than it was for me. Um and for me it was just kind of it was another way for me to thumb my nose at them, like, moving out during while their friends could see, and they could be like, "Oh, are you off to college already?" "No, I'm moving. I'm out. Peace." Um,
Where did you go?
I moved in with a boyfriend. Yeah. And I lived with him until I went away to college in January.
You had a boyfriend that was old enough to have his own place?
Yeah. Um, I He was 3 years older than me. And we'd been dating since I was 17. My mother actually threatened to like have him arrested at one point when I was 17 and he was 20. But so he turned 21 right around the time I was 18, which was perfect for me. Um, and he could then get us both into clubs up in New York State, and I would be the DD. So I could get in, and they would put X's on my hands, but then I would go in the bathroom and hurry up and wash those off, and then I could drink, and I would get annihilated and dance, and then we would go back home. But like I began like club and bar drinking like then at 18. Even when I moved to college, I had friends that were also 21 and up. So I was getting into the bars here in college, and I was going to frat parties and all kinds of stuff. Like Bloomsburg University is a huge party school. So like that was the only way I could be social. It was the only way I knew how. Um, Looking back now, I know that I'm neurodivergent, and there's a reason that I couldn't socialize properly, and that, the only way that I could feel like I was fitting in was if I was drunk. Um, but yeah, so like I partied my way through and out of college. I dropped out right around my 21st birthday, because my 21st birthday was during finals week, the semester that I dropped out.
So you dropped out before finals were even done.
Yep. Yeah. I just decided that I didn't want to deal with that. I wanted to celebrate my birthday.
Scuba's behind you.
Yeah, she was up next to my leg a minute ago. I'm amazed that she didn't meow.
Okay, so you were 21 when you dropped out. Did you already live off campus?
Yeah. I only lived on campus for 2 semesters, but I went through 3 roommates in that time. The third one I was friends with really up until we got married. Um, but the other 2, not so much. Like I said, if I wasn't drinking, I couldn't be social, and like I would have these like weird interactions with people, or like I think I was just I don't according to my birth chart. Let me pivot to astrology. According to my birth chart, I hold up a mirror to people that makes them very uncomfortable. And I think that that might be true going all the way back. Like, I show people too much of themselves and it makes them uncomfortable.
I get it.
Yeah.
No, I know what you mean.
But besides all of that, I ended up moving off campus to live with that boyfriend that I had moved in with before I came to college. Because he wanted to move down here to live with me. And so as soon as I was able to move off campus, I moved off campus and got an apartment with him. But it was 20 until 21. When I turned 21 and I dropped out of college, I also kind of sabotaged that relationship because he had already done like the bar thing, and he was kind of like over it, and all of his friends that he drank with were still up in Susquehanna where we were from. I was making friends here in Bloom because I was going to college. And I wanted to go to the bars with those friends, and he didn't want to. They weren't his kind of people. So I totally sabotaged that relationship and ended up getting rid of him. And I then kind of Tarzaned into the next relationship with somebody that did drink alcoholically. And it was somebody that I worked with and that also went to college with me. And so it was all kinds of codependent and yeah. He was actually he was a virgin when we met. And I guess I corrupted him.
Sounds like you did.
He was a farm boy from here. Yeah.
Happens to the best of us.
It does. It really does. But I mean, that whole pattern just kept repeating itself really until like my mid 30s. And now,
Tarzan from your marriage to me, though.
huh?
Technically, you did Tarzan from your marriage to me.
Technically, because I was still married.
I mean, you separated, and then 2 months later we met.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. I did. I did Tarzan again.
yep.
Yep. But because of you actually and your sobriety when we first met, that was able to sort of spill over to me, and I was able to sort of absorb sobriety from you after we, went out drinking a bit.
Yeah, because you corrupted me.
Yes.
No, I can't. I'm not going to sit here and blame you for my relapse. I'm not doing that. The first time I drank when I relapsed with drinking, it wasn't with you. Like, I specifically drank because I wanted to. And I wanted to test the waters to see if I was really an alcoholic or not. And I drank for 9 months. And we didn't really drink alcoholically until the end. I would say the end of the 9 months in February is when I started drinking alcoholically. And I would drink an entire bottle of Jack in one night and be like, where'd my Jack Daniels go?
Mm.
So, and we both, like, my sober date is different or my clean date is different, but it's almost been 4.5 years since either of us have taken a sip of alcohol.
Yep.
Which is pretty damn incredible.
It sure is.
Like
I know
it's
it's incredible for me because I tried to stop drinking a few times. Like in the year, specifically like the 6 months before I met you. I had been trying to trying to quit drinking. Like I had to quit drinking for a surgery that fall. And so I had started using cannabis then to like help myself stop drinking. Um, and like I would stitch together a few weeks, I stitched together a month, and then I would drink again because all of my friends were still alcoholics. But then when I left my ex and I got my own apartment, it was like, oh, I can celebrate. I'm single now. And so I was drinking. And specifically, one of those times was right when we met.
You mean when you broke up with me for a day?
Yeah, when I broke up with you because I went out drinking and met somebody.
You broke up with me for like 3 days.
Yeah. But look at that. I came to my senses after those 3 days. But yeah, I can't remember where I was going.
So what are you doing for your sobriety? Like I go to NA every single day. And I know you don't do NA because you were never into drugs really. And AA wasn't for you because you didn't really like it there. I tried to get you into AA meetings, but it wasn't really your cup of tea. So what do you do for your sobriety?
What I do now for my sobriety is recovery dharma, which is a Buddhist inspired approach to recovery. The big thing that drew me to it was that it doesn't ask me to believe in anything that I don't already believe in. Because, like, I have some issues with the higher power part of AA and NA. I can't just let go and let God because I don't believe in it. So what I do is, with the Buddhist approach, the only thing that they ask us to believe in is our own potential to grow and change. And for me, that, like, putting it in my own hands and making me feel empowered in my recovery was exactly what I needed. Because this is all about like meditation and accepting yourself and accepting that there's suffering. Like everybody has suffering. It's part of the human condition. And in Recovery Dharma, we open our meetings with readings. I'm sure that you can relate to that. But ours are, we read the practice, we read the Four Noble Truths, and we read the Eightfold Path. The Four Noble Truths are about the suffering. Like there is suffering. There's a cause of suffering. And the end of suffering is possible when you just accept that they're suffering. It I didn't get all that quite right word for word, but
Yeah, elaborate. Doesn't have to be word for word. I'm just because,
yeah,
and I've
it's
never.
sitting with the
I'm not trying to lead a horse to water because I
no,
honestly we respect each other's recoveries. You know,
absolutely.
I do NA separately, and you're not like, well, what do you read first, and what do you? So like, we don't talk about this kind of stuff for
No.
watching. This is not a conversation that we've had before. So I'm genuinely wondering, like, all of these questions about recovery dharma because it's newer to me. All I know is that you're in an hour and a half meeting. I know you meditate,
Mhm.
and that's about as much as I know.
Okay, so we do the readings, we read the Four Noble Truths, we read the Eightfold Path, and the Eightfold Path is all about bringing wisdom and mindfulness to everything that you're doing throughout the day, and like just like being in the moment, whether it's a good moment or a bad moment, because the bad moments, they're going to happen. There's no stopping it, there's no escaping from it. And that's what a lot of people, when they're in addiction, are doing, is they're trying to get through the discomfort of being human, and the discomfort of having trauma, and the discomfort of just existing in between in between fixes. It's all uncomfortable. So what we're trying to do in recovery dharma is sit with our discomfort, give it space, let it breathe. And when we do that, we sort of build a tolerance for discomfort. And when you build up your tolerance, um, it makes it easier to sit with those things and not escape from it and not run from it, and really examine like your feelings and your the things that hang you up. Like this, one of the great things about recovery dharma is that it's not just for addiction. Like people come to recovery dharma meetings because they want to recover from their trauma. They want to um just be more mindful about how they eat or how they spend their money, or how um they act in their relationships. Like there's we have these affinity groups, and like one of them um I attend on Sundays, and that's a codependency group, because I'm codependent, and you and I have talked about this, and we're addressing some of our codependencies because of my recovery. Um and it's just all of these process addictions that people deal with. Like there's gamblers, there's people that have food and sex addiction and love addiction, all kinds of things, and we can all come together and we read the readings, we meditate as a group, because nothing, in my experience, like I've been meditating since really my early recovery with you, because during the pandemic figured out that if I meditate, oh my god, it makes it so much easier for me to journal. It makes it so much easier for me to like deal with stuff. Um but we meditate as a group together, and then we talk about our experiences with the readings and with the meditation. Like everybody gets to kind of chime in with how they are, where they're at, like what milestones they might be celebrating, and just how they're feeling. And a lot of the shares end up being like, wow, that meditation really helped me, process this argument that I had with somebody the other day, or it can be really anything. And it just brings so much peace and calm and self-love to me and my existence. Um, it's been wonderful on so many levels.
That's awesome. I mean, I definitely noticed a difference in you in the last. When did you start that? Was it like March?
Yeah, it was March. I started going to these meetings, and I was only going to a couple a week, but now I go to at least one every day.
At least one.
At least one.
How many do you have tomorrow?
One.
Well, tomorrow, as in today, because this is being released Sunday. So, how many are you doing on Sundays?
Well, including meeting with my mentor, four. Yeah. Because we don't have sponsors and sponsees in Recovery Dharma. We have mentors, and we also have wise friends. Um, and wise friends are like just like your friends that you check in with and stuff from group. And I've made a lot of friends, and it's been really enriching.
Yeah, I see you all the time, talking to somebody different or texting with somebody different or FaceTiming with somebody different. And I definitely can tell the difference in how you are now as opposed to how you were 6 months ago. Because it's easy to get sober, but it's not easy to stay sober.
No, and even if you're sober, if you aren't processing some of what you did or didn't do during your time in addiction, you're still not really in recovery as far as I'm concerned. Like
Yeah.
you need to be working some type of thing to get really over yourself. Like whether it's therapy or meetings or some people do shadow work or really anything.
Weren't you
But
considering doing shadow work?
what's that?
Weren't you considering doing shadow work?
I was, and I started to, but my problem with the shadow work was that I was doing it by myself. And like,
Shadow is kind of hard to do a shadow when you're a solo person unless the light's hitting you in a certain way.
well, shadow work is more, it's like spiritual inquiry where like you're really trying to like really you're sussing out your inner shadow and all of the gunk that you carry around with yourself. But when you're trying to do those things on your own, you're going to get avoidant. That's what I did. I got really avoidant, and I wasn't like following through on stuff, so I needed to have the accountability. So like, even though I was still not drinking, I still wasn't healthy. Even I've been in therapy for what, 2 years, but it still wasn't enough. I wasn't really getting to the heart of everything. But now I am, and it's also teaching me to like love myself in ways that I wasn't before. Um like
So
even
how
hmm?
much how much time do you need to become a mentor?
They say at least like 3 to 6 months of like time with recovery dharma. Um, but there's no real like hard and fast rule.
Have you ever considered it?
Oh, absolutely. I want to finish going through my inquiry questions before I do. Like we don't have steps. Um, like our book is full of, this is the book. Our book is full of questions at the end of each like chapter, and the questions are about like, what was the one that I read today? There was a really good question I read today. Um, are you avoiding feelings by checking out and giving up, or through obsessive busyness and perfectionism? And that one hit me because that's something that I do when I'm avoiding something, is I get excessively busy and perfectionistic. And it's questions like these that make me like ask myself why I do that. Like, what is it in me that makes me like dive into something else to distract myself from an issue that I genuinely need to take care of. Like, I've been dealing with this problem with my teeth, and I know that I keep catching myself getting busy doing something else instead of making the phone calls about getting my teeth fixed. So this week I finally did that. And it's a lot of it is like finding the ways that people get in their own way and figuring it out. But I'm part of an inquiry circle where we meet once a week and we go over these questions and then we go over our answers to them. And it's really enlightening.
How far along are you in the book with questions?
I'm really not that far. I'm not quite even halfway through. Um, but the first few questions were kind of rough for me. Um, and a lot of that is because of how I have to be super thorough. And like one of the questions was kind of like a moral inventory. And it's like listing the behaviors that I have engaged in that have hurt myself or hurt others is the question.
So it's kind of
So
like
that
a before.
yeah, so that takes some time. Um but like that's one of the earlier questions in recovery dharma. Um so like that took a while. Now that I'm through that, I'm going through the questions a little bit faster. So I don't know, maybe like another month or two, I'll be ready to be a mentor. Um, but I'm also in the process of, I've been invited to join two committees. Um, and I'm in the process of creating two new meetings, one of which we don't have yet, and that's a meeting for parents and like uh, parenting through the lens of recovery dharma and using some of our ethics and precepts in our parenting.
Precepts?
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, the ethics and precepts are basically like the like wise rules of like wise understanding, wise mindfulness. And it's using our highest self to do the best good that we can. Um like we have one of our things is wise speech, and it's making sure to speak in a way that is not inflammatory or harmful. It's basically being diplomatic. um but it's applying some of those things to parenting then. And I'm going to be working with the outreach committee on like really creating a whole program for that. So I'm really excited about that. Um, and I am also trying to work up the courage to start a local group too. Um, because it's something that I think our area could really benefit from, because I know that there's a lot of people that are like me, and that, while AA or NA would be beneficial, sometimes it's hard because you get hung up on the higher power stuff or just anything that doesn't like strike you well with some of the 12-step stuff. It can be incredibly you know, intimidating. So recovery dharma is just a little bit more gentle, and like I said, it's trauma informed and it's really inclusive. The other thing with all of our meetings is like we all give our names and our gender pronouns, and we acknowledge the ancestral lands that we reside on, and it's it's all this just peaceful, loving gathering together of energy.
Well, I'm glad that you found it. Where can people find Recovery Dharma? Because like usually I can say go to aa.org or na.org and you can find any meetings anywhere in the world. So if somebody's interested in Recovery Dharma, besides reaching out to you directly, what else can they do to find where meetings are, literature?
Recoverydharma.org.
Okay, so tell me
Is
aa.org and na.
Yes, we have a free PDF version of the book available there. There's meditations, there's a whole list of meetings. Um, there's all kinds of resources, and it's growing, and it's it's just so wonderful and enlightening, and I really hope that my talking about it here helps to spread the word about it.
Yeah, because I had never heard of it until you had told it to me. And, there's so many, different ways people can recover these days. So I find it important because, like you said, not everybody likes NA or not everybody likes AA and not everybody likes recovery Dharma. You know,
Nope.
like everyone has different things that they can latch on to and learn from. And I think it's important to spread as much awareness as recovery platforms as possible because there's people out there that feel ostracized from AA or ostracized from NA and feeling like they don't have a safe place to go to and they have to try to basically white knuckle it.
Yeah, and white knuckling recovery, in my opinion, from what I've seen, just keeps people sick. Like you're a dry drunk or whatever, because you can still be miserable and you can still be harming people and you can still be harming yourself. So like recovering like fully on the inside is so important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I don't do as many meetings as you do. But I do NA every day at noon.
Mhm.
And I do my GA Gamblers Anonymous meetings on the weekends. And I'll try to sprinkle in A. I haven't been to AA in like a month,
No,
but
I know.
but I have dove so much deeper into NA. Like I facilitated my first meeting the other day.
I
Uh,
know. I was so proud of you.
Nobody showed up. I mean, there was 18 people in the NA meeting, but none of the main facilitators. There's like 5 main facilitators in our group,
Mhm.
and none of them were there. And it was Monday, and I was just sitting there like, all right, I know the format, I know what we have to do, so I might as well just take the reins and kick this off because people were just having conversations, and
Yeah.
because and then somebody was like, it's 12:05. Are we going to start this meeting? And I was just like, fuck it, I'm starting a meeting, and this is how we're going to do it. And luckily, the speaker showed up. The 5 people running the meetings didn't come, but the speaker showed up at least. So
Hey,
I,
that's a big piece.
yeah, he speaks for 15 to 20 minutes. I was the timekeeper. I was the facilitator. I was,
You're
and
just doing it all.
yeah, and I'm not a host, so I couldn't pull the clock up on the thing. So I had to do the timer on my phone and flash my phone in front of the screen saying 1 minute left. Like when there's a will, there's a way.
Mhm.
I'm so glad you found recovery, Dharma, though, because I have seen a difference in your recovery in the last 6 months. The last 5, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm rounding up. Um, And, because you were a dry drunk for a while,
Mm-hmm.
you did therapy, and, we're both in therapy. But that's not always the answer. We're both in psychiatry too.
Yeah.
um, we're all about talking out our feelings and being upfront with each other, being honest, even when it's not a fun conversation to have. We're very, we don't like to keep things to ourselves. We like to be able to tell each other exactly how we're feeling in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it can sometimes lead to some difficult conversations, but it's a lot better than keep it in your head.
Yes, because keeping it inside just makes it that much worse, and you create scenarios, and it's just not good for anybody to keep it inside.
Yeah. Well, I don't really say much after an interview, but thank you and I love you.
I love you too.
Bye.
Bye.